the superstitions we perform without thinking, knocking on wood, avoiding cracks in the pavement, the ghost stories we tell our children, ancient warnings cloaked in entertainment, the primal comfort we feel in a shared meal with loved ones, a ritual that transcends time, their desperate need for community, for faith, for a story that makes sense of the chaos. That need is the bedrock of our own civilizations. They had no legacy carved in stone, but every seed they planted, every child they raised against the odds, every prayer they whispered in terror, built the world we now take for granted. We have more information than ever before, but perhaps we have less inherited wisdom. The sun dips below the trees, and the chill of evening seeps into your bones. Another day is done. The light is fading, and you are still alone with your burden. You sit for a long time as the single room grows dark around you, the familiar shapes of drying herbs turning into strange, hunched figures in the gloom. The smell of wood smoke and damp earth is the only scripture you have ever truly known. Your heart does not think of lungs, of disease, in the way a modern mind would. Your heart thinks of a garden. A body is a garden, tended by 4 humors, and his is dangerously out of season. There is too much sanguine, too much blood. His inner soil is too hot, too moist. The very quality that makes him cheerful and robust in health is now boiling over, drowning him from the inside. This is the terror of your age. You live inside a body that is a complete and utter mystery to you. That is the kind of power that belongs to God or the devil, and you have no truck with either. But you also know that faith is its own kind of magic. The boy does not need a spell to bewitch a girl. He needs a spell to embolden himself. So you turn to your bundles of drying herbs, your fingers finding the small, fragrant stalks of lavender. You tell him nothing of its true properties, that it soothes the troubled mind, that it eases a restless sleep. Your presence is the only medicine you have left to give, and it is a bitter, inadequate balm. When all the herbs are used and every whispered plea has dissolved into the smoky air, what is the role of the one who remains? Is it to pronounce failure or to perform the last, most human duty, to simply sit in the darkness with another? The failure is immense, and it settles deep in your bones, a cold reminder of your own mortality and the terrible fragility of all life. But the act of making, of giving, of receiving, it is a ritual against the chaos inside her. You tell her of the fields outside the village, now brown and bare under the sky. The land cannot give and give, Elspeth, you explain. It must lie fallow, it must rest in the dark and the cold, to gather its strength for the spring. Your spirit is the same. It is not failing, it is a season of the soul. You give her sorrow a name that is not sin. It is a fundamental human contract, forged in fear and need, that has never truly changed. It was built, inch by painful inch, by the silent, anonymous labor of generations who knew none of its rewards. Studying them is an act of historical empathy. It dismantles the myth of the ignorant savage and replaces it with the portrait of a clever, terrified, and hopeful ancestor. By understanding their fears, of a failed harvest, of a vengeful God, of the darkness beyond the firelight, we see the ancient roots of our own anxieties. And what of them still remains in us? More than we know. Their blood runs in our veins, but so do their echoes. Ask yourself, when your entire culture is held within the minds of the living, how do you ensure its survival? You can't build a vault to protect it. You must find another soul, another vessel, and pour your own into it, hoping it doesn't spill. This transmission is a holy act, as profound and intimate as birth itself. It is the only form of immortality you will ever know. The thought is a constant, quiet terror. We, in our time, have forgotten this fragility. Our knowledge feels permanent, eternal, stored in 1,000 unthinking places. This is a section 14. You are lying on the straw pallet, but the sleep is not a peaceful one, and you drift in and out of a world painted in sweat and shadow. Beside you, your husband, Thomas, coughs. It is not the dry, dusty cough of winter, but a wet, tearing sound that seems to rise from the very roots of his soul. He turns, spitting into the hearth, and in the dim firelight, you see it, a dark blossom of blood staining the ash. You let the silence hang in the air, thick with the scent of dried yarrow and wood smoke. You could tell him to pray to Saint Agnes, the patron of young love, but his faith is already stretched thin by longing. You could give him a sprig of rosemary for remembrance, but it is not memory he wants, it is presence. You know, with a certainty as deep and old as the earth, that no herb or whispered prayer can magically bend another human will. There is no charm to ward off this blight, no prayer that seems to reach God's ear when the fever is this high. Your knowledge of herbs and humors is a flimsy wooden shield against a battering ram of plague. The feeling of helplessness is a physical thing, a weight that settles on your shoulders, pushing you down. You are not a healer in this moment. You are a witness to a battle already lost. You sit with the grieving mother, not as a woman of medicine, but as a fellow woman who understands the shape of a child-sized grave. You are not a physician. You are a witness. Then you rise and take down a small clutch of dried lemon balm. You crush the leaves in your palm, and the scent, bright, green, a ghost of summer, fills the small room. You pour boiling water over them in a simple clay cup, the steam rising like a wordless prayer. You hand it to her, and the warmth of it is an anchor. This will not cure you, you say, your voice low. It is just tea. We have professionalized this ancient, terrifying relationship, hiding it behind the sterile language of insurance claims and copays, behind the white coats and diplomas that sanctify knowledge. Yet the core truth remains, a fossil embedded in our modern lives. We still place our trust in those who hold the secret knowledge of our bodies. We may no longer pay with bread, but the primal vulnerability we feel in the face of sickness, the desperate hope we place in a stranger's hands, is a direct echo of that dark, smoky hut. The taste of bread, the warmth of a fire, the healthy cry of a newborn, these were not small pleasures. They were monumental victories against the darkness. Their joy was not shallower than ours. It was simply drawn from a deeper, more perilous well. What do we gain when we look this honestly at these vanished people? We gain a profound and humbling sense of perspective. We begin to see that our modern world, with all its comforts and complexities, is not a given. If you choose poorly, or if you wait too long, and the final stiffness claims you in the night, it will all be gone. It will simply vanish from the earth, like a story told to no one. 100 remedies for colic, for wound rot, for the shaking sickness. The precise way to handle birthing wart, so it soothes the womb, but doesn't poison it. The knowledge of which mushrooms bring visions, and which bring a swift, agonizing death. All of it will evaporate. Ask yourself, when the crowd turns, what matters more? The good you have done, or their desperate need for someone to blame. Not for a sickness, he clarifies, but for the affection of a girl who works at the fuller's, a girl whose hair catches the sun like spun honey, a girl who does not know he draws breath. He watches you with a hopeful, terrified glance, as if you might curdle the milk in the pail by the door, or worse, turn him into a toad for his audacity. You know the folk tales he was raised on. You know the power he imagines you hold. The tea, meant to cool the internal fire, is a fragile hope against a raging inferno. You dip a clean linen cloth into a basin of well water, wring it out, and gently place it on the child's forehead. The mother, Maris, watches your every move, her eyes wide, with a desperate animal hope that tears at your soul. She is looking for a miracle, but you are not a saint. You are a manager of suffering. This is the brutal reality that defines your existence, the vast, cold ocean of what you do not know and cannot do. You look at her, at the raw knuckles where she has picked at her own skin, at the slump of her shoulders beneath her woolen shawl. You have no erd for a sickness of the spirit. There is no poultice for a soul that has gone fallow. So you offer a different medicine. You motion for her to sit by the hearth, where the small fire crackles and spits. For a long time, you say nothing. You simply sit with her in the quiet, offering the profound, unspoken truth that her sorrow is real enough to be shared. The ability to read the signs of a body as a farmer reads the sky, to know the secrets of root and leaf. This knowledge is your power, but it is also your cage, isolating you as surely as a leper's bell. Ask yourself, is it the life you bring forth that they value, or is it the death you keep at bay? They come to you not with faith, but with the failure of it, when their prayers have gone unanswered and the saints have turned a deaf ear. And in its fading, we find the quiet truth of their existence. If there is one timeless takeaway from these lives, it is the profound resilience of the human spirit in the face of absolute uncertainty. We think of their lives as unceasingly bleak, a litany of plague, famine, and fear. And they were. But they were also defined by an incredible capacity to find meaning in the mundane, to sanctify the smallest moments of relief. You need to find the one with the sight, not the magic of charlatans, but the ability to see the subtle droop of a plant that signals its readiness, to see the unspoken pain in a proud man's posture, to see the truth of the world, not just its surface. Who has the nerve? The choice is a heavy one. Your legacy is not a plot of land or a bag of silver. It is a library of life-saving wisdom that exists only behind your fading eyes. We see it in the hushed tones of an office that isolates a colleague, in the drawn curtains of a neighborhood that distrusts a new family, in the swarming anonymous judgments of social media. The fear of the outsider, the person who is different, has not been erased by progress or banished by science. The witch hunt has merely changed its form. The pyre has become digital, and the flames are lit with every share, every whisper, every fearful glance. He has not come for a poultice to draw out the poison of a rusty nail, nor a decoction of willow bark to break a fever. His sickness is quieter and far more common. He asks for a charm. The words leave his lips in a hushed, desperate rush, as if saying them aloud might summon the very demons the priest warns of every Sunday. It moves through the village every few years, a phantom reaper that favors the very young, leaving a silence in its wake that is louder than any grief. You have seen it take a brother. You have seen it steal a neighbor's firstborn. It has no name you dare speak aloud, lest the utterance invite it into your own home. You do what can be done. Your hands move with the slow, deliberate grace of ritual. You grind meadowsweet and willow bark into a fine powder, steeping it in boiled water. The priest, Father Thomas, sees only a lack of piety, a failure of gratitude. He has prescribed more prayer, fasting until she feels faint, a litany of saints to petition. But the saints are silent, and hunger only makes the fog thicker. She believes she is being punished, that a small, patient demon has taken up residence behind her ribs, slowly eating her soul from the inside out. In a world where God's grace is visible in your good fortune, a sickness of the mind can only be a sickness of the soul, a stain that marks you as unworthy. The priest speaks of the devil's work being done through the hands of those who usurp the healing that belongs to God and His saints. They need your hands, but they fear the knowledge that guides them. They see you coax a child into the world, but they also see you gather nightshade and foxglove under a new moon. They cannot separate the healing from the potential for harm. In their world of stark dualities, of God and Satan, salvation and damnation, your knowledge occupies a terrifying gray space. Was it a blessing or a curse to be born with this sight? Not a crown or a coffer of gold, but a flickering light in the darkness, a moment of peace, the quiet promise of another dawn. And, Section 17, wind down, reflective close. The fire in the hearth dwindles to embers, each one a dying star in the small universe of the hut. The sounds of the night settle in, the sigh of the wind, the distant cry of an owl, the deep, resonant silence of a world asleep. The story of this day is over, a single page turned in a book that was never written. You look at the young girls of the village as they pass, their laughter like the chiming of small, careless bells. Which one? You watch them at their chores. Elsbeth has quick hands, but no patience. She rushes her stitches, and her work is clumsy. Agnes is patient, kind even, but her eyes hold a deep fear of the forest, of the things that rustle in the dark just beyond the firelight. To be your apprentice is to walk into that darkness willingly. Your hands can deliver a baby from the brink of death, but that same skill, if it seems too easy, too sure, can be twisted into proof of an unholy pact. Your survival has never depended on your knowledge alone. It depends on your ability to perform a constant, delicate act of humility, to remain small, unthreatening, and just lucky enough. This ritual of suspicion is not a relic. It lives on, a ghost in our modern machinery. He does not knock. People like him never do. They simply appear at the threshold of your hut, a shadow detaching from the twilight, their hope and their shame warring in their downcast eyes. He is young, barely a man, with the kind of earnest fear that only unrequited love can carve into a face. He shuffles in, his worn leather shoes silent on the packed earth floor, his hands twisting the hem of his woolen tunic into a knot. You see the pulse beating in his throat, a frantic little bird trapped in a cage of bone. Chapter 8, The Wall of What Cannot Be Done. The heat that greets you is not from the hearth. It's a dry, devouring warmth that radiates from the small bundle cradled in her mother's arms. The child is barely 3 years old, a wisp of a thing now burning like a coal. Her skin, once as soft as new lamb's wool, is a terrifying map of angry red pustules. Each one is a seal, a mark of the sickness you know all too well. She speaks, and her voice is a dry whisper, like leaves skittering over cold stone. Her husband, a good man, has not raised his hand or his voice. Her children are fed, and their cheeks are rosy from the crisp air. The harvest was decent. By every measure the village uses, by every prayer of thanks whispered at the church, her life is blessed. Yet she describes a fog, a great grey sadness that settled in her bones sometime after the last child was weaned. It has no cause you can put a name to, no wound you can staunch. Your cottage sits at the very edge of the village, where the tilled fields give way to the wild woods. It is a deliberate placement. You live at the edge of their society, a necessary shadow. You are welcome in their homes during the desperate hours of crisis, a fevered child, but difficult birth, a bone that needs setting. But in times of peace, in the bright light of day, their gazes are wary. The children are hushed when you pass. We forget the deep, resonant joy that can be found in simple things. A warm meal, a safe home, the feeling of a day's work well done. Your life is a testament to the fact that meaning is not found in the extraordinary, but in the consistent, compassionate, and necessary. As you chew the dense bread, you look into the fire. It is a portal to an ancient, shared human experience. For thousands of years, this has been the reward at the end of a day of struggle. You know what the feel of a coming birth in the tautness of a woman's belly, the look of a death fever in the glassiness of a child's eyes. This wisdom is not yours. It was passed to you by a woman with hands just as worn, who spoke to you in whispers while shelling beans by the fire. She, in turn, learned it from her grandmother. This chain of knowledge is a sacred, living thing, more precious than any Lord's charter, because it is written in memory, not ink. And it is mortal. They don't have to believe you are a witch. They only need to fear that their neighbors might. One bad harvest, one stillborn calf, one summer storm that turns the crops to mud, and that fear will demand a sacrifice. Your reputation is your only shield against the world, and it is as fragile as a dragonfly's wing. You feel it tearing now. This is the terrible paradox of your existence. You are the source of health and the scapegoat for misfortune. In a world governed by saints and kings, your power comes from what you do not say. A strange and lonely kingdom of unspoken truth, but here it is, in the dirt-floored reality of your hut, smelling of herbs and blood. It is the application of skill and unwavering attention to another's pain. It is the quiet assertion that one person can stand between another and the abyss. Here, you must ask yourself, what is more holy? A chant sung in a cold stone church, or the warmth of a hand that knows, without words, exactly how to stop the bleeding? This is a reminder that the most profound acts of humanity are often small, mundane, and desperately necessary. The knock on your door is not a sharp rap of urgency, but a soft, hesitant brushing of knuckles, as if the person on the other side is already apologizing for taking up space. You open it to find Elspeth. The sun of late autumn is bright and brittle today, making the world sharp and clear. But it doesn't seem to touch her. Her eyes are the color of a winter river, deep and still, with a hollowness at their center that seems to swallow the light. In a world where coin is a rumor for most, life is paid for with life. The grain that will sustain you for the next 2 days is exchanged for the new life you helped bring forth. Your position in this village is not built on wealth or title, but on a mountain of these small, heavy debts and unspoken trusts. You are the village midwife, the cunning woman, the one they turn to when God's plan feels too cruel. You are essential, but you are also an outsider. You walk a tightrope over the chasm of superstition. You know which herbs calm a cough and which ones can bring on a woman's courses. But you also know to mutter a charm over the pot, to gather your ingredients only under a waxing moon, not because you believe it empowers the herbs, but because you know it empowers the patient. Faith is its own medicine. We search for happiness in grand gestures, in vacations, promotions, and possessions. You find yourself squinting, your world losing its crisp edges, the delicate, intricate veins of a dock leaf blurring into a simple smear of green. The knowledge in your head is a vast, teeming forest, but the vessel that carries it is a ship taking on water, its timbers groaning. You are the village healer, the cunning woman, the one they come to when the priest's prayers have failed. You know the secret names of the herbs that grow in the deep woods, a blessing to cleanse the wound, not of grit and grime, but of the perceived taint of your gaze. Her fear is a blight, more contagious than the sweating sickness. It spreads without a sound. The next morning, the baker who has always given you a warm heel of bread now finds his oven suddenly requires all of his attention as you pass. The women at the well fall silent, their gossip turning to stone on their tongues. They look down, away, anywhere but at you. This is how it begins. Not with a shout, but with a silence. You offer a blessing to the miller on his son's name day, knowing the boy is a living testament to a sin that could unravel two families. A single misplaced word, a knowing glance held a second too long, could act as a spark in a dry barn, turning lives to ash and ruin. Your silence is not a virtue. It is a dam holding back a flood. You are trusted not for your goodness, but for your discretion. You are stitching his future back together, one small, precise gesture at a time. When the last knot is tied, you smear the angry red line with a thick salve of honey and crushed yarrow. Honey to seal the world out, yarrow to clot the blood within. This is the rhythm of your life. Chaos arrives at your door, and you meet it with order, one careful stitch at a time. We often think of grace as a lofty spiritual concept, a prayer answered, a saint's intervention, or have we just built a cleaner, more expensive temple for the same fundamental faith in a process we will never truly comprehend? The trust, and the ignorance at its core, remains. The young husband, a boy of no more than 17 winters, his face streaked with tears and the grime of the fields, approaches you. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. He presses a small, dense loaf of dark rye bread into your hands. It is still warm from his wife's last baking, a sphere of life-giving grain. This is your payment. This small loaf is not a transaction. It is a sacred pact. We fear the shadows that lurk within. But still, they planted. In the face of famine and frost, they pushed seeds into the soil. And in the end, in our own way, against our own darkness, so do we. Their names are lost to the dust, but their stubborn hope, planted in the dark earth like a seed, is the world we inherit. It's a melancholy truth that your success is a quiet rebuke to the priest's prayers, a fact that breeds as much suspicion as it does gratitude. You know that the same hands that offer you a loaf of bread in daylight could be the ones holding a torch to your door in darkness, should the harvest fail or the milk sour. Ask yourself, was it the willow bark that saved Ilara? Or was it her belief that something, anything, could be done? Your remedies are a strange alchemy of inherited knowledge and desperate hope. They are no longer the hands that could pull a calf from its laboring mother with brute, certain strength, nor the hands that could grind yarrow into a perfectly fine powder without a single tremor. Now, they are maps of a life lived too hard. The knuckles are swollen, a painful rosary of joints that ache with the memory of every cold winter. A faint, uncontrollable tremble has begun in your right thumb, a tiny betrayal that makes threading a needle an exercise in mounting frustration. It is not a gasp of concern for her son's pain, but of horror at your proximity. She scoops the boy into her arms, her body a rigid shield between him and you. For one searing heartbeat, her eyes lock onto yours, and in their depths you see a fear so profound it is almost a curse. Then she turns her back. She rushes past your cottage, her footsteps heavy with purpose, pointedly ignoring your offered help. As she makes for the priest and his holy water, she doesn't need a remedy. She needs an exorcism. To see the rot beneath the floorboards of every home is to never again stand comfortably within their walls. To know everything is to be truly alone. Ask yourself, which is the greater burden? The secrets you are told, or the silence you must keep? Every interaction becomes a performance. You smile at the blacksmith in the market, a man praised for his strength and good humor, and the ghost of his wife's bruise makes your own arm ache. You know the gulls carry the forest's own austere magic, a bitterness that purifies, a property that makes the thread an enemy to the invisible demons of rot. Your movements are economical, practiced, a quiet ritual against the body's rebellion. Each stitch is a small victory against the chaos that spills from a man's veins. You are not just mending flesh, you are mending his ability to swing that scythe again, to hull the grain, to feed his wife and the new child whose cries you can sometimes hear on the wind. We do not understand the complex cascade of chemical reactions it triggers in our brain, the pathways it blocks, the signals it silences. We trust the pharmacist in their white coat. We trust the doctor with their arcane script. We trust the label on the bottle, a litany of unpronounceable ingredients. We have simply outsourced our faith. We've moved it from the village healer, whose hands smelled of dirt and herbs, to the sterile, faceless pharmaceutical industry. Ask yourself, has the nature of our belief in healing truly evolved? Ye bind the cord with a thread you boiled for hours over your own small fire, a ritual of purification they don't understand, but one they trust. You wrap the small, squirming bundle in a piece of worn but clean linen and hand it to its mother. Her face, pale and luminous in the gloom, is a mask of exhaustion and wonder. Her eyes find yours, and in them you see not just gratitude, but a flicker of the same awe and fear the others hold for you. Your work is done, and we have the search engine for the desperate, midnight questions. Its cold blue light, a poor substitute for a hearth fire. We have gained immense, almost godlike power, but we have lost that single, trusted soul who could look at our whole, messy human selves, our aching back, our grieving heart, our fearful spirit, and simply sit with us. We have built a world of efficient, miraculous cures, but we still ache for the simple, profound medicine of a hand to hold in the dark. They feared the shadows that lurked in the deep woods, the tangible darkness full of predators. It is the smell of another day survived. There is no grand victory, no triumphant celebration. There is only this, the quiet satisfaction of a fire, a full belly, and the knowledge that today you eased more pain than you caused. You held the line. You were a fulcrum on which life and death teetered, and today life tipped the scales. In a world defined by hardship, this small, quiet moment is a form of profound peace. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. The light is fading, and not just from the sky. You hold your hands up to the thin afternoon sun filtering through the open doorway of your hut. You are returning from the woods, a bundle of fresh feverfew in your arms, and you are the closest. You see the blood welling up from his scraped knee, bright against the dirt. Your knowledge, your very nature, urges you forward. A clean cloth, a bit of chewed yarrow to staunch the bleeding, a calming word. These are the instincts that have defined your life. But as you take a step, the mother sees you. Her breath catches in her throat, a choked, sharp sound. They arrive as a plea for a tonic against anxiety, a salve for a mysterious ache, a poultice for a pain that has no name. To treat the body is to be granted access to the soul's deepest wounds. This knowledge is a heavy cloak, woven from the village's collective shame and sorrow. It grants you a subtle power, a terrifying understanding of the hidden mechanics of this place, the debts, the lusts, the resentments that churn beneath the surface of communal life. But it also isolates you completely. It is not the jagged, dirt-filled tear of a boar's tusk or the hidden, festering splinter that breeds blackness under the skin. A clean wound is a declared war, and you know its battle lines. You waste no time. You pour boiled, cooled water over the wound, ignoring his sharp hiss of pain. Pain is merely a messenger, and you have already received its tidings, with a needle fashioned from the polished wing bone of a goose, and thread you have simmered in a pot with oak galls for their biting tannin. You begin to stitch. Your work is a constant dance on the edge of understanding, guided by tradition and a desperate hope that what worked for your grandmother yesterday will work again for this boy today. Every remedy is a prayer whispered to the earth, a bargain with forces you can only sense, never see. We look back on these methods as primitive, a testament to their ignorance, barbaric even. Yet are we so different? We take a pill for a headache, a small white disc of compressed powder, and we trust. The baby, slick and silent at first, finally wails, a thin, sharp cry that cuts through the tension in the smoky hut like a blade. The room exhales in a single shuddering breath. Mumbled prayers to Saint Margaret, patron of childbirth, turn to joyful, tearful thanks. You walk by the unsteady light of a tallow lamp, its flame dancing and casting long, fearful shadows on the wattle and daub walls. Your hands, though chapped and calloused from the herb garden, are steady. You clean the infant, marveling at the perfection of its tiny fingers, the fierce grip it already has on life. You are the one they ran to when God seemed too far away. Have we truly evolved past you? Or have we just fractured your role into 1,000 different specialists, each one insulated from the other? We now have the doctor for the body, sterile and clinical, mapping our blood and bones. We have the therapist for the mind, untangling the knots of our modern anxieties. We have the pharmacist for the remedy, a transaction of pills in plastic bottles, a quiet, mortal miracle. Now the loaf of bread from that morning's birth sits on your simple table. It was a gift from the new mother, a woman whose first 2 babes were claimed by the blue-lipped cold of infancy. This one, you helped turn in the womb. You cut the cord with your own sharp knife, and your slap was the first violence and the first mercy the babe knew. The loaf is coarse, heavy with rye. You break off a piece. The smell of grain and smoke fills your small hut. We will explore how they survived, what they believed, and why their fears shaped the rituals that gave their lives meaning. It's a world of profound faith and crushing superstition, where the line between a saint and a devil, a remedy and a curse, was perilously thin. Here, survival wasn't an abstract concept. It was the first and last task of every single day. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Her piety is a garment she wears like chainmail, but you can see the fear trembling underneath. It's the deep, primal fear of the unknown, of a new well whose water might be cursed, of a new lord with new cruelties, of new neighbors whose godliness has yet to be proven. A week later, it happens. A triviality, a moment that should be forgotten as soon as it ends. Her son, a small boy with his father's solid frame, trips over a loose stone near the tannery. His cry is thin and sharp. You know that the miller's miracle child, born after 7 years of a barren marriage, has the Lord's startling blue eyes, not his father's muddy brown. You know the young Reeve's son, praised for his piety, seeks not God in the woods, but the company of the stable hand. You know which husbands drink the harvest away, which wives are starving, not for bread, but for a kind word. Which pious widows pray for their late husbands to burn for their sins. These confessions are never direct. He holds out his hand, wrapped in a blood-soaked rag that has already surrendered its fight, a slip of the scythe. He doesn't need to say the words. The wound speaks its own terrible language. You guide him to the stool by the low burning fire. As you unwrap the rag, the coppery scent of fresh blood fills your small hut, a perfume of misfortune. You peel it away carefully. It's a deep, clean cut, a gruesome smile across his palm. This is a comfort. A clean cut is a knowable thing, an honest injury. But you have one last resort, a secret whispered from healer to healer. You go to the bread box and retrieve a loaf left in the damp. On its surface, a bloom of gray-green mold, a tiny, foul-smelling forest. You scrape it off, mix it into a poultice with more bread, and apply it to the festering cut. You have no concept of penicillin, no understanding of bacteria or antibiotics. You only know that sometimes, by a grace you cannot name, the sacred rot of the bread consumes the profane rot of the flesh. We imagine history through the lens of grand battles and royal decrees, but the most common and desperate fight was waged right here, on a dirt floor, between a mother, a child, and the woman who dared to intervene. 3 is a miracle that belongs to God, and you are getting dangerously close to stealing it. The priest speaks of the soul, of the eternal, but you deal in the visceral, messy, desperate reality of the body. You are the hedge witch, the wort-cunner, the cunning woman, the healer. Your legacy is not in a name carved on a stone, for your name will be forgotten before the next harvest. It is in the generations that exist, quietly, because of your knowing hands and your silent courage. But when his words offered no comfort, they sent for you. You, with your poultices of willow bark and your infusions of yarrow. You, the one they call a cunning woman when they need you, and a hedge witch when they don't. You brewed the tea, your hands steady as you coaxed her to drink, whispering not of heaven, but of the simple strength of her own body. You cooled her brow with cloths soaked in well water, an act so mundane, it felt like a prayer in itself. The fever broke, just as the light began to fail. This is a story of the marrow, the deep and often desperate truth of daily life for the vast majority of people who lived and died in a world lit only by fire. We will walk in their worn leather shoes, feel the gnawing hunger in their bellies, and listen to the prayers they whispered against the encroaching dark. This is history, not as a collection of dates and battles, but as a lived experience. A ghost story where the ghosts are our own ancestors. You notice the cart first, its wooden wheels groaning as they sink into the damp earth of the village track. A new family. The man is built like an ox, his gaze fixed on the work that awaits him. The children are pale and silent, but it is the woman your eyes settle on. She clutches a small, worn cross at her throat, her knuckles bone white. Her stare is not one of curiosity, but of appraisal, a fearful inventory of every thatched roof, every watchful eye, every shadow that lies between the cottages. A fall near the well, she'd whispered, her eyes fixed on a spiderweb in the corner, refusing to meet yours. You nodded, just as you always do, and spoke of the calming properties of flowers. You are the keeper of unspoken truths. In a village where every life is a story told in public, at the market, in the churchyard, over the back of a fence, you are the sole repository of its private, unholy gospels. You are the confessor without a cross, the judge without a gavel. Section 7. A common wound, a simple grace. The knock on your door is not a knock. It is a frantic, muffled drumming, the sound of a fist wrapped in cloth, a sound of pure urgency. You are not surprised. The harvest moon is rising, and the scythes are working from dawn until the last ray of light deserts the fields. When you pull the door open, he practically falls inside. A boy, no older than 20, his face ashen, his eyes wide with a pain that is deeper than the flesh. You grind it into a fine powder, mix it with a dollop of lard, and hand it to him with instructions spoken in a low, certain tone. It is a fragile, embryonic form of science, born not of fury, but of observation and 1,000 desperate trials. Later, a mother brings her son, his leg wrapped in a dirty rag. A fall from a fence post. A simple cut, now angry, red, and weeping. You unwrap it, and the smell of sickness fills the air, sharp and foul. You look at the wound, and you see death's calling card. It was a craft of intuition, inherited knowledge, and profound faith, not just in God, but in the earth itself. The line between healer and witch was as thin as a spider's thread, and your survival depended on which side of that line. You are the one who knows that willow bark can quiet a fever, that yarrow can staunch a wound, that a poultice of comfrey can help knit a broken bone. Your knowledge is a river, fed by your mother and her mother before her, a current of wisdom that flows outside the sanctioned texts of the monastery. This is a path of immense responsibility and constant, quiet peril. You are caught between the sacred and the profane. One cure is a mercy. 2 is a skill. The warmth is a welcome comfort. a living thing pushing back against the encroaching chill that seeps through the daub walls. Your shoulders ache with a familiar, bone-deep weariness. It's the weight of the day, the weight of holding the line between a quick death and a hard life. Earlier, you were at the bedside of Ilara, the weaver's wife. Her body a battlefield of fever and sweat. The village priest had already been, his Latin prayers a hollow shield against the inevitable. He spoke of God's will, of penance and the afterlife. The silence of the pre-dawn hour is broken only by the gnawing of a mouse in the wattle and daub. You shift on your straw pallet, the scratch of it a familiar complaint against your skin. A single cold thought surfaces before any other. Another day to survive. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. This isn't a story of kings in their castles, or knights clashing in fields of glory. Yet there is a deep, grounding peace in this cyclical life. To be so intimately connected to the seasons is to understand your small place in a vast, ancient pattern. Ask yourself, in gaining our freedom from the soil, what fundamental sense of belonging to the world did we lose? The pouch of dried chamomile you gave her is still on the table. A small, lumpy offering against the coming night. But it wasn't a sleep tonic Elspeth truly came for. You both knew it. People don't just bring you their wounds, they bring you their secrets, wrapped in the thin linen of a plausible complaint. Her complaint was a recurring headache, a tightness in her shoulders. The secret was the shape of her husband's fingers, bruised purple on her upper arm, hidden beneath her sleeve. A simple, undeniable truth he cannot yet forbid. The damp has settled deep in his bones. A cold guest that will not leave. For him, you take a piece of dried willow bark. You don't know of salicylates, of anti-inflammatory properties. You only know the story, passed down like a saint's life, that this tree's skin can quiet a body's screaming aches. You place it in the mortar and begin to grind. The pestle's rhythm is a steady heartbeat in the quiet cottage, a prayer of dust and pressure. The child is stuck. You can feel it. Panic is a weed, and it is growing fast in this room, threatening to choke what little hope remains. You must be the steady hand that pulls it out by the root. Was it your knowledge they trusted, or the weight of your mother's name behind you? And does it even matter when a soul hangs on the strength of your grip? This is the reality of medieval medicine. A world without sterile fields or anatomical charts. A necessity born of a world that was both intimately, suffocatingly connected and terrifyingly ignorant. You are the community's immune system, its living repository of practical grace. When a child's cough turns into a wet, ragged gasp in the dead of night, they do not run to the church. They run to you. When a young wife's labor stalls, her screams echoing off the stone walls, it is your hands they seek. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. Section 16. A fire in the hearth. The day ends. The sun, a smear of blood and rust, bleeds across the horizon, and you sit by your small fire. The flames lick at the dry peat, spitting tiny embers that die in the gloom of your hut. The terror of an enemy you can't see, or the endless responsibility of an enemy you can see all too clearly in the mirror. You are as much a farmer as the man in the fields, but your crop is health. There is no work-life balance, only life, and the work required to sustain it. The idea of leisure would be as foreign as the concept of a microbe. Your rest is found not in inaction, but in the simple, repetitive grinding of a root in a mortar, the slow stirring of a poultice over the fire. We chase productivity and efficiency, trying to squeeze more from every hour. We see this medieval rhythm as a form of drudgery, a larder filled only by the grace of others, or a life so independent that no one owes you a thing. It is the ancient war between the written word and the spoken tradition, between the celestial decree and the earthly remedy. When the structure that promises to save your soul also seeks to crush your wisdom, where do you place your faith? In the cold stone of the church, or the living soil beneath your feet? You pluck another handful of chamomile. The soft petals cool against your calloused fingers, and you do not look up. To meet his gaze would be to accept the battle, for now, you are just a woman gathering flowers. They are the worn, familiar weight of a stone mortar and pestle, its hollow smoothed by your mother's hands, and her mother's before that. They are a few simple clay pots, blackened by countless fires, and strips of linen, boiled clean in the same pot you'll use for tonight's meager pottage. There is no separation between medicine and life, between healing and hunger. It is all one and the same struggle. A man sits on the lone stool, his face a roadmap of pain, his knuckles swollen like river stones, your hands, stained with the memory of 100 herbs and a dozen births, reach out. You are not a doctor, a surgeon, or a scholar who reads Latin texts. You are a village woman with knowing hands, a repository of wisdom passed down from your mother, and her mother before her. A wisdom of the body, of the moon's pull, of which roots calm a screaming womb, and which leaves staunch a flow of blood. In this small, suffocating room, you are the fragile barrier between a new life entering the world and an old one leaving it. And you will walk out to your small garden, past the chicken coop and the pigsty. You will kneel, and with hands stained by dirt and tannin, you will check on the green shoots just now pushing their way through the dark, cold soil. You are surrounded by a universe of death, and yet your entire life's work is an act of radical, stubborn hope. You are not a name. You are not a person, not in the way the reeve or the priest is a person. You are a function. We will explore how fear shaped faith, how hunger rewrote morality, and how in a world lit only by fire and faith, people found reasons to endure. We will trade the glory of the tournament for the quiet terror of a long winter, the edicts of popes for the superstitions whispered over a cradle. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. The constant, nagging pressure to optimize, to perfect, to control our biology. The terror of a demon in the blood has been replaced by the clinical worry of a high cholesterol reading. The fear of a supernatural curse has become the quiet guilt of a poor lifestyle choice, a genetic predisposition, a failure to live up to our body's full potential. They lived in a body full of ghosts. We live in a body full of data. Ask yourself, which is the heavier burden? Your hands are permanently stained, your nails broken as you wash and chop, preparing everything for the long, dark months ahead. You are preserving life itself, bottling the memory of the sun in tinctures, drying the strength of the soil into powders. And then comes winter. Winter is for surviving. It is for doling out your precious stores with the grim calculus of a saint, rationing miracles. It is for huddling by the fire, the smoke, a constant companion, and praying you have enough. This life is a relentless cycle, a constant dialogue with the seasons. It is an exhausting, precarious existence, but one with a profound, built-in sense of purpose. We have since replaced this web with the clean, impersonal logic of the market. We work for money, we buy what we need. The transaction is sterile, efficient. It has severed the direct, visceral link between our labor and its impact on the person standing next to us. We romanticize the purpose you live every single day, forgetting that such purpose comes with the heavy, unceasing weight of inescapable obligation. Ask yourself, what is the truer poverty? You are a walking, breathing challenge to his entire world. Every poultice you apply is a silent heresy. Every fever you break with a willow bark tea is an argument that grace can be found outside his cathedral walls. It suggests that salvation might not only be dispensed in wafers and wine, but that it also grows wild, free for the gathering, in a humble churchyard. This is the terror that grips him, the fear of knowledge that exists outside of approved structures. The tension is a cord pulled taut between your cottage and his church. Section 4. The tools of a dangerous trade. Back in your cottage, the world shrinks to the space between the hearth and the door. The air is thick, a heavy blanket, woven from the scents of drying herbs, hanging from the low rafters. The clean, cool promise of mint, the calming ghost of lavender, and the sharp, bitter tang of wormwood, a warning in itself. This is not a workshop of shining instruments. This is your apothecary, and it smells of earth, smoke, and desperate hope. Your tools are not gleaming steel, forged in a city far from here. The only light comes from a single tallow candle, its flame fluttering as if in terror of the life and death struggle, consuming the room's oxygen. In the corner, the other women of the house mutter prayers, their rosary beads clicking like the bones of worried skeletons. Their Latin is broken, more a desperate charm than a coherent plea. They look at you with a mixture of hope and accusation. You are their last resort before God. And sometimes they aren't sure which is more powerful or more dangerous. You kneel. The dirt floor is cold and unforgiving against your knees. They fear the killing frost, a silver assassin that can steal a year's labor in a single night. Above all, they fear the wrath of an unknowable God and the intimate, constant whispers of the devil. And yet, there is a stubborn rhythm that defies this terror. Tomorrow, the farmer will rise with the dawn and sow his fields, trusting the soil one more time. The new mother will press her face to her swaddled child and sing a lullaby against the encroaching dark. We are here for the farmer who tasted ash in the spring rain and feared for his crop, for the young woman who bartered a story for a heel of bread, for the child who saw the world in the patterns of frost on a window pane. This is Sleepy History, a place where we listen for the whispers between the lines, where we walk through the muddy lanes and feel the biting wind, where we seek to understand not the politics of the throne, but the profound, desperate, and beautiful business of human survival. This is the tragic irony of their medicine. The cure is often a quieter, more methodical killer than the disease. We have since banished these ghosts. In an age of MRI scans and genetic sequencing, we have mapped the human body down to its very code. The body is no longer a haunted house, but a complex, knowable machine. We have traded their miasma for our microbes, their humors for our hormones. But this victory has come at a cost. We have traded the fear of the unknown for the anxiety of the known. The air in your cottage grows thick and sweet with the scent of drying herbs. Yarrow for staunching blood, meadowsweet for fevers, St. John's wort harvested at its peak potency on its holy day. A charm of captured sunlight against the melancholy of the dark. You work until your back screams, because a day of rain or a week of damp can turn a life-saving harvest into a pile of useless rot. Autumn is a surrender to the earth. The work goes down into the soil, digging for the gnarled, bitter roots of burdock and elecampane. As long as you can deliver a healthy baby, set a bone, or offer a prayer for the dying, you will eat. Your well-being is a direct and brutal reflection of your usefulness to others. But this web holds you fast. You are owed, but you are also forever indebted. To leave would be to tear the fabric, to erase your own value from the only ledger that matters. You cannot be forgotten, because you are too enmeshed in the lives of others to ever be discarded. He is a fearful one, haunted by the fragility of the human soul. His world is a fortress built of doctrine and ritual, its walls defended by Latin prayers and the rigid authority of the Church. In his mind, all true healing, all salvation must flow from a single, sanctified source, from God, through his priests. Any power that bubbles up from the earth itself, from the mud and the leaves and the accumulated wisdom of grandmothers, is a rogue current. It is an untamed, feminine force in a world he is desperately trying to control through masculine order. Their survival was written not on parchment, but on the very leaves of the trees that sheltered them. They didn't need a clinical trial to know that chamomiles soothed an infant's colic. They had generations of quieted cries as their proof. His lantern casts dancing, monstrous shadows on the wattle and daub walls of the village huts, making the known world a bestiary of imagined threats. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth, wood smoke, and fear, a scent as common in these lanes as the mud itself. Inside, the scene is one of primal chaos. A young woman, barely a woman at all, is writhing on a straw pallet. Her face, usually flushed with the vigor of youth, is pale and slick with sweat. The air is heavy, tasting of iron and effort, so thick you could choke on it. O waiting one, the world beyond your small wattle and daub wall is vast and filled with terrors, both seen and unseen. They are specters that haunt every waking moment and poison every dream. You see them in the anxious eyes of your neighbors. They fear the plague, a foul breath that travels on the wind, indifferent to prayer. They fear the famine, a gaunt shadow that visits when the rains fail or the sun is cruel. They fear the wolves, whose howls from the deep woods are a reminder of the thin veil between your world and the wild. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. This is not a story of kings or of knights in shining steel. Their chronicles are carved in stone and bound in leather, told and retold until they feel more like myth than memory. We are not here for them. We are here for the ghosts, for the names the scribes never recorded. The cut is swift, practiced. You watch the blood, impossibly red, spill into a wooden bowl. It is a terrifying, holy moment. You are not just removing blood. You are releasing the fever, pouring out the imbalance, giving the ghosts that plague him a way to escape. It is a desperate, tangible act in a world of invisible threats. It feels, for a moment, like control. It is an act of faith in a theory, one that will likely leave Thomas weaker, hastening his journey to the grave. In spring, while the men are turning the heavy, wet earth in the common fields, you are on your knees in the woodlands. Your eyes, sharp from a lifetime of searching, scan for the first tender shoots of coltsfoot pushing through the leaf litter, a balm for the winter coughs that still echo in the village. You gather wild garlic, its sharp promise of restored vitality, a prayer against the lingering weakness of the hungry months. Summer is a frantic race, a desperate chase against the sun. The turnips, left on your doorstep before dawn, spoke for him. They say, you were useful, you are still of value. This is the currency of community. It is a patchwork quilt, sewn from the crises and triumphs of your neighbors' lives. Every salvaged item in your hut is a story, a debt paid, a favor owed. This system is not about profit. It is a web of mutual obligation, as intricate and tangled as a spider's silk. It is both a safety net and a cage. When he speaks of these things, of potions brewed under a new moon and poultices made from unholy weeds, you feel the eyes of the congregation drift towards your small cottage at the edge of the village. They are not hateful eyes, not yet. They are curious and laced with a new kind of fear. The same people who seek you out in the dead of night, whispering of a child's burning fever or a husband's festering wound, now shift uncomfortably in their pews, their gratitude curdling into suspicion. He is not an evil man. You know this. Ask yourself, was the scholar with his ink-stained fingers debating the number of angels that could dance on the head of a pin, more learned than the woman who knew which mushroom meant a full belly and which meant a final, agonizing communion with the earth? Today we label her knowledge ethnobotany, or alternative medicine. We treat it with a detached academic curiosity or a dismissive skepticism, forgetting that for 1,000 years this was not alternative. It was simply medicine. It was the only shield they had against the relentless siege of fate. HTTPS. The first cry in the dark. The summons comes without a word, a frantic pounding on your cottage door that is a language all its own. You are already awake. You are always half awake, listening for the sounds of a world that needs mending, for the bleating of a lost lamb or the first cough of a fevered child. Throwing a coarse wool cloak over your shoulders, its familiar weight a meager armor against the night, you follow a panicked young husband. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. Title: The Gardener's Hope. You look out from your cottage door one last time. The air is cooling, carrying the scent of wood smoke and damp earth. Out past the church, beyond the tilled fields, the village is settling into the deep, star-dusted quiet of the rural night. But this is not a peaceful silence. It is a listening silence. Chapter 1. Introduction. A rat scurries over your foot in the dark, and you don't flinch. It's just another mouth in a world of endless, gnawing hunger. The air, thick with the smell of wood smoke and damp wool, carries the distant, rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer, a sound so constant it has become a part of the silence. Outside your wattle and daub wall, a dog barks, a sharp, lonely sound that is swallowed by the morning mist. This is not the grand tapestry of history. It is the single frayed thread of your life. You've never seen a toothbrush. It is an act of defense against an enemy you cannot see, born from a correct observation that sickness clusters around filth. For an entirely wrong reason, This fundamental ignorance is a source of constant, low-grade terror. And so, when the physician's expensive advice fails, the barber surgeon is called. He is a craftsman, not a scholar. His world is one of sharp steel and warm blood. He sees the excess sanguine humor not as a concept, but as a problem to be drained. He ties a leather strap around Thomas's arm, and the vein rises, a dark blue river beneath the skin. The bill for lauds has long since faded into the bird song of a false spring. But you do not mark your days by the prayers of men in stone towers. Your clock is the stiffness in your own bones, the slant of the light through the wattle of your wall, and the slow, agonizing greening of the world outside. The wheel of the year has turned again, and it demands its price in sweat and vigilance. There are no days off. Your work is dictated by the sun and the soil. These oats are the echo of that first cry, a payment in survival for a life you helped shepherd into the world. Your gaze falls upon a basket of turnips, their skins wrinkled and tough. They smell of cold earth. They're from Thomas, the farmer whose hand you stitched closed when his scythe slipped during the harvest. You can still feel the shocking warmth of his blood, the way his knuckles were white with pain as you drew the pig gut thread through his flesh. He never spoke a word of thanks. He didn't have to. They are a blessing from the soil, a gentle medicine for fretful children and mothers exhausted by childbirth. A gift. But from the stone archway of the sacristy, he does not see a gift. He sees a threat. His Sunday sermons have become a drumbeat of warnings. He speaks of the devil's cunning, the snares he lays for the unwary soul. He rails against folk magic and women's superstitions, his voice rising with a desperate fervor that echoes off the cold stone walls. God put the cure beside the curse. You just have to look. This is a science of intimate observation, a relentless process of trial and error played out over generations, where the cost of a mistake was not a bad mark, but a fresh grave in the churchyard. This is the intellectual inheritance of the common folk, practical, vital, and utterly invisible to the written record of history. We search for their lives on vellum and in royal decrees, but we are looking in the wrong library. Ask yourself, in a world without science, where God's will and the devil's work were the only two explanations for everything, which would you cling to more tightly, faith or fear? If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin, and live the life they never got to finish. We will feel the chill of the morning mist, thick with superstition, and listen for the whispers of a past that is not as distant as it seems. We will seek to understand not just what they did, but why. How a fear of the dark shaped their God, how the cycle of the harvest became their only calendar, and how in a world of profound suffering, they still found reasons to hope. If you love immersive real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Their herbal remedies are the ancestors of our pharmaceuticals. Their struggles for survival, for a slightly better life for their children against impossible odds, laid the very first unsteady stones of the world we now inhabit. They are the roots of our family trees, unseen but essential, drawing sustenance from a dark and difficult soil. They had no legacy carved in stone, but every seed they planted, every prayer they whispered in terror, built the world we now take for granted. He calls it miasma, a foul, invisible fog that rises from the swampy land by the river, from the tanner's pits where hides rot in the sun, from the offal and dung piled in the gutters. This bad air, he explains, seeps through the wattle and daub of your home, invading the body and corrupting its natural state. His prescription is not medicine, but a change in atmosphere. Burn rosemary and juniper to purify the room. Keep the windows tightly shuttered against the night air, where these poisons are strongest. We may have stripped the ritual and the mystery from our medicine, but we have not, and cannot, eliminate the deep human need for it. The confident bedside manner of a modern doctor, their crisp white coat and reassuring words, what is that, if not its own kind of powerful charm? The wind finds the gaps in the wattle and daub, a low, keening whistle that promises a bitter winter. It is the season of reckoning, not with God, but with your larder. You run a hand over the rough weave of a small sack, its contents a meager lump against your palm. Oats, not bought, but earned. You see again the face of the baker's wife, slick with sweat in the dim candlelight, her cries giving way to the thin wail of a newborn. You were the one who caught him, cleaned him, and placed him in her arms. His shadow falls long and thin across the consecrated ground, a black gash on the green. Father Thomas is watching you. You don't need to look up to know. You can feel his gaze like a physical weight, a pressure between your shoulder blades as you kneel among the graves. The air in the churchyard is cool and heavy with the scent of damp earth and the sweet, apple-like fragrance of the chamomile you're gathering. The small daisy-like flowers grow thickest here, nourished by the quiet dead. This is a lesson you cannot afford to forget. This knowledge was not learned from a book. The parish priest owns the only book in your world, a heavy tome filled with a language you cannot speak, and a God who often feels as distant as the Lord in his castle. Your wisdom is a living library, an inheritance of hushed tones and urgent gestures. You can still feel your mother's hand guiding yours, crushing a willow twig. For the aching head, she'd whisper, her voice as dry as autumn leaves. And comfrey, the knit bone, for the broken limb. It's a story told in the texture of hand-spun wool, the smell of wood smoke, the taste of gritty bread, and the silence of a life lived without a single written word to mark its passing. We will explore how their fears shaped their rituals, how their faith was a shield against the world they could not explain, and how their survival, day by agonizing day, was its own quiet, defiant miracle, a history felt in the gnawing emptiness of a hungry belly, in the scratch of a wool tunic on skin, and in the desperate weight of a prayer whispered for a child's fever to break. We will walk through the forgotten rituals, the daily acts of survival, and the profound beliefs that gave shape to a world lit only by fire and faith. Here, history is not something you read. It is something you inhabit. We gain a profound sense of perspective. We see the raw, unvarnished components of our own societies, the need for community, the power of belief to both unite and destroy, the desperate search for meaning in a world that often seems to have none. We learn that progress is not a straight line, and that for everything we have gained in convenience and information, something may have been lost in connection and raw, earned wisdom. what remains of them in us? More than we know. Their superstitions echo in our knocking on wood. To be a medieval person is to be haunted by your own biology. The physician, a man whose hands are softer than a priest's and whose purse is far heavier, might be summoned. He will not press a stethoscope to Thomas's chest. He will hold a vial of his urine up to the light, studying its color and turbidity like a soothsayer reading tea leaves. He will consult charts that align the parts of the body with the signs of the zodiac. He will speak not of infection, but of imbalance. He will speak of the air, the line between your intuitive medicine, his desperate faith, and what the priest condemns as sorcery, is a razor's edge you walk every day. You have seen a poultice fail on a man who believes he is cursed, and a simple broth of nettles cure a woman who trusts you with her life. You are a master of harnessing this invisible force, this power of the mind to command the body. We, in our enlightened future, call it the placebo effect and study it with scientific rigor. But you practice it with pure, ancient intuition. The moment of admitting, there is nothing more I can do, is a timeless, humbling agony that connects the most advanced technology to your simple, desperate act of placing a damp cloth on a fevered brow. It is the shared, silent burden of all who dare to care. Ask yourself, when every institution tells you your suffering is a moral flaw, is the act of simply being heard the greatest rebellion of all? The knowledge that you are not alone in your darkness might just be the one thing that helps you survive until the sun feels warm again. Your gnarled fingers, which know the feel of a fevered brow and the frightening stillness of a child who has stopped breathing, also know the language of the leaves. They trace the feathery, serrated edge of yarrow, a plant that can staunch the bleeding from a woodsman's axe wound. A few feet away, the delicate, lace-like flower invites the touch, but your mind screams a warning, passed down from your own mother's lips. Hemlock, the fool's parsley. Its fronds are a death sentence, a silent poison that closes the throat as surely as a hangman's noose. This is not a history of gilded thrones and jewel-encrusted crowns. We will not walk the polished floors of cathedrals with bishops and kings. Instead, we will walk the muddy, rutted tracks of the forgotten. The peasant, the midwife, the soldier, the leper. We will feel the gnawing hunger of a failed harvest, the chilling dread of a winter fever, and the desperate hope of a prayer whispered to a wooden saint. This is history with the dirt left on. The first sound you hear is not the rooster, but the slow, heavy toll of the death bell, counting another soul lost to the sweating sickness. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. This is not a history of kings and conquerors, of lines on a map, or dates carved in stone. This is a history of the heart. What they built, these forgotten people, was not a world of comfort, but a world of resilience. Their lives were a testament to the stubborn, almost impossible durability of the human spirit in the face of near constant dread. They were not so different from us. Their fears may have worn the faces of demons and witches, while ours wear the masks of economic collapse or ecological disaster. But the cold dread in the pit of the stomach is the same. It is a timeless human inheritance. When we study them honestly, we gain more than facts. It is a vessel, a sack of skin and bone, animated by a soul, but governed by forces as mystical and unpredictable as the weather. A fever is not a symptom. It is a fire within the body, a malevolent heat that must be fought with cooling herbs and desperate prayers. But sharp pain in the gut is not indigestion. It is a worm sent by a witch or a knot tied by a demon in passing. Every ache, every shudder, every strange discoloration of the skin is a sign to be read, a portent. Instead, you pour the deep purple buds into a tiny leather pouch and draw the string tight. You press it into his trembling hand. Place this under your pillow, you instruct, your voice low and even. It will bring you courageous dreams. You are not selling him magic. You are selling him permission to believe in himself. When he stands a little straighter tomorrow, when he meets the girl's eyes across the market square, will it be the lavender or the courage he dreamed of? Does it matter if his suffering is eased? It's a ghost that will walk beside you for the rest of your days. Even with all our modern medical marvels, with machines that breathe and hearts that can be restarted, every doctor, every nurse, eventually comes to this same wall. They stand in the sterile fluorescent light of an ICU, and they face the same truth you face in this dim, smoky hovel. There are diseases that cannot be cured, accidents that cannot be undone, lives that cannot be saved. You give it a place in the turning of the world. She looks at you, and for the first time, a flicker of something other than despair moves in her eyes. It is not hope, not yet. It is the simple, shocking relief of being seen. We have 1,000 words for her state now. Depression, trauma, anxiety. We have specialists and pills and theories that fill libraries. But we forget this. We forget the ancient, potent medicine of presence without judgment. Section 3. The unwritten university of the wild. The cold seeps through the leather of your turnshoes. A familiar morning baptism. The village is still a ghost, wrapped in the thin gray shroud of dawn. But here, at the edge of the woods, your day has already begun. Your classroom has no walls. It is the forest floor, the riverbank, the neglected corners of the churchyard, where the nettles grow thickest. You rise with the sun, not to till the fields under the reeve's watchful eye, but to forage, to read the land. The first sound of the day is not the rooster's crow, but the slow, heavy tolling of a bell. A soul has departed in the night. You listen from your pallet of straw, counting the rings. It is a morbid arithmetic, a way of keeping score against the cold, the hunger, and the things that creep in the dark. In this world, you are never truly alone, and never truly safe. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages.